We are back on Inside Politics. Our guest today, Larry Woods, a Democratic strategist, and Steve Gill, a Republican strategist. One more question about the Mueller report when it's given out. General Barr says he's going to put out a color-coded thing inside of that, sort of a code to tell what parts are redacted and why it's being redacted. Larry, is that going to help? I don't think that's, that's interesting, but is that really going to help very much? I mean, the controversy is going to be there regardless, no matter how you color-code it.
Counterproductive from Barr's point of view. Every time he says with color-coding grand jury testimony, well, there are 3 exceptions to that. So he's going to get pelted with, why didn't you say it fitted the exceptions? And every time he says ongoing criminal investigations, there are a couple of exceptions to that, so he's going to get pelted with that.
You can go to court and get grand jury testimony.
Oh, yes. It's difficult. It's rare, but yes, it's done.
Steve, the president did several victory laps after the Mueller report first came, at least the memo came out. Now he's kind of pulled back a little bit, is back sort of attacking Mueller again in the whole probe and the whole investigate the investigators. Did he overdo it? Because there's a pretty decent chance that some of the information that is in the Mueller report when it comes out, even the redacted part, are going to have some things that may not be criminal, but might be embarrassing and might be more in the range of impeachment.
Yeah, and I think that it may be embarrassing. I don't think it's going to be anything near impeachment, but I do think that his pivot is not as much criticizing Mueller and Mueller's role in the investigation, but the FBI agents who were clearly trying to wage essentially a coup. You've got intelligence officials, the dark state that was clearly trying to do things to affect American political process through this sort of investigative process. And I think when you start seeing people get indicted, you've seen Nunes and the House refer at least 8 people now towards criminal referrals. You're about to see President Obama's former counsel, Craig, get indicted. I think you're going to start seeing some people loosening their tongues, and the investigation will now turn to investigating why this got started and why U.S. government officials were investigating a campaign for political purposes rather than for legitimate legal purposes.
Larry, Speaker Pelosi in the House has sort of said, let's back off of impeachment. I think her quote was, the president's not worth it. Do you think there's anything that's come out so far in the Mueller probe that makes her change her mind about that? Does Democrats continue to need to stick to their knitting, what they're trying to do in the House, and not get into impeachment, not push that? Absolutely.
Speaker Pelosi is smarter than all the rest of them put together. She's the absolute perfect leader for the House Democrats at the perfect time. She needs some more influence with some of the younger, newer ones, but she'll get there. Well, she's taking the right approach.
Between gridlock between the 2 parties in Washington and the Democrats themselves not really having their act together even in the House, hasn't the window of getting anything done in Washington between now and 2020 pretty much gone away? Although I noticed that Pelosi and the president are talking about perhaps some kind of infrastructure program.
It'd be great. Clearly, Pelosi can get the new Green Deal passed. Trump's going to veto it, even if it made it through the Senate.
Yeah, can't make this.
Clearly, if she raised the minimum wage by close to $10 an hour, Trump's going to veto it. So you're right. Those kind of things that I want that she favors are not going to happen until the 2020 election.
But the Democrats are still Will Rogers' party, right? They're not organized, not very well organized.
Who would want me?
Would this be the same new Green Deal thing they're going to pass in the House that couldn't get a single vote from a single Democrat in the Senate?
I told you, Pelosi's smart, and she's not going to pass it until she thinks she can make a law out of it.
And Pelosi can't pass anything when she can't control a House member who spews the most anti-Semitic rhetoric and then demeans 3,000 Americans killed on 9/11 as just some people did something. She's got to get control of her caucus, and she doesn't have control of that caucus before she can do anything.
Well, looking towards 2020 in the presidential election, Larry, to quote one of your Democrats who is in office as president, it's the economy, stupid. And the economy's pretty good. Aren't the Democrats going to have a tough time beating Donald Trump just because the economy is very good right now?
The economy's, I'd say, near great, and has been for what?
Just about the whole time
10 years at this point.
Well, and before that, right.
Now, Trump's appointments to the Federal Reserve could foul things up. Both those guys, Kane and the so-called economists, they're going to vote the wrong way even from Trump's point of view, and slow everything down. So if he gets those 2 guys on the board, which I don't think he will, he's going to have trouble with the economy. Otherwise, you're right. The economy is going to be a strong point in 2020 that he can brag about.
I think the Federal Reserve has less to do with it, and Stephen Moore from the Heritage Foundation is going to skate through. Herman Cain has issues that have nothing to do with whether or not his votes on the Federal Reserve would be right. The reason the economy is booming is because of tax cut, regulatory cuts, and an enthusiasm and a belief that President Trump will move things along. We have the lowest jobless rate in this country in 50 years since 1969. So I think it's unfair to say that, oh, we've had a great economy for the last 10 years. The economy sparked and boomed when President Trump took over for Barack Obama.
Anybody, just look it up. You'll see the graph on the unemployment rate starting with Obama going straight down, and Trump has continued it.
And Steve, the president's polling numbers remain underwater in most states, including in some states that he won, and with the difference in him winning, like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, doesn't he have to run the table again in 2020 in those states to have any chance to get reelected if the polling's right? Because so far, the Mueller thing doesn't seem to be changing people's minds about whether they like him or don't like him.
Well, Rasmussen Reports has President Trump at a 53% approval rate. That's 7 points higher than Barack Obama at the same point.
Most of the polls are a lot worse than that.
It was the outlier poll that was also more accurate on President Trump getting elected instead of Hillary Clinton.
Not on the popular vote, on the electoral vote, yes.
Well, the popular vote doesn't matter because people in New York and California dictate the popular vote. The electoral vote, as you point out, is Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio. Ohio's now moved so decidedly in favor of Trump that the Democrats are talking about not really competing there. In Florida, you have Governor DeSantis at an over 60% approval rating that's going to help carry President Trump there. So President Trump's going to actually be able to open the opportunity in states he didn't carry, while the Democrats are losing ground in states they have to win, like Ohio and Florida, to have any chance.
We're going to carry the independent vote in 2020, and Trump's going to lose, therefore. It's just that simple.
Larry Woods is our guest, Democratic strategist, Steve Gill, Republican strategist. We're talking presidential politics for 2020. We've been talking about the Mueller report. We'll talk about the president's taxes after this break.